Illinois state lawmakers heading back to Springfield for the final week of legislative session for this calendar year. And what exactly are they going to take up? Got 3 days scheduled. Are they going to go all 3 days? So tomorrow's when they head back. I imagine they'll do committees, they'll do caucuses, they'll do some floor action. The Illinois House likely going to take up the Illinois Senate's amendment to a House bill that deals with prohibiting public investment in any Russian businesses. The Senate passed that amendment to a House bill that the House passed earlier this spring. So that's queued up for final passage. Something else that's queued up for final passage, and of course, with the work I do outside of WMAY with the Center Square and Illinois Radio Network, we look closely at what happens at the Illinois State House. And one thing that could pop up is a measure that could give income tax exemptions for student loan forgiveness. This is a measure from State Senator Selena Villanueva, Democrat out of Chicago, and it brings about 4 different major changes to the Illinois tax code. And in particular, one of those deals with the student loan forgiveness that could possibly happen. Here's
the first one being student loan forgiveness income tax exemption. So this is to make sure that the Illinois income taxpayers that are exempt from student loan forgiveness or are getting student loan forgiveness are exempt in case the federal government does not exempt those federal income taxes for that loan forgiveness.
So again, that was Senator Villanueva at a Senate committee when they were in session before Thanksgiving during a committee hearing talking about the different changes that she has laid out in this particular bill. Now, when it comes to student loan forgiveness, you've got the battles raging in the courts right now between the Biden administration's executive order giving up to $20,000 of so-called quote-unquote forgiveness, while you've also got the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program that was passed by Congress and enacted years ago by former President George W. Bush. That has canceled debt for some, but the amounts that have been canceled there, not considered income by the Internal Revenue Service. So it'll be interesting to see what ultimately happens with this particular bill. It does a variety of other things, including laying out $2 million in tax credits for Broadway musicals across the state of Illinois.
As a lover of musicals, this is a good one because who doesn't love Wicked or Hamilton or any of the other wonderful shows that are, touring in our state?
But Villanueva's measure also gives some tax exemptions for people with disabilities who invest in their ABLE accounts and more. But one thing that's not clear is what's going to happen with the SAFETY Act. And that is a controversial piece of legislation that deals with public safety. You've got the Pretrial Fairness Act, which kicks in January 1st, and some people are concerned about that. Law enforcement have sued across the state. They've got a consolidated lawsuit challenging the Pretrial Fairness Act and other elements of the SAFETY Act. But what about Amendment 1 that apparently, we have yet to get the official certified totals, but apparently Amendment 1, which codifies collective bargaining in the Illinois Constitution, that's looking like it passed with the 50% plus 1 of all votes cast. But could Amendment 1 impact the SAFETY Act? To delve into that a bit is Mailee Smith. She is a staff attorney with Illinois Policy. Mailee, thanks for your patience and hanging out with us this morning. How could the Amendment 1 impact the SAFETY Act?
Yeah, thanks for having me this morning. This is a really fascinating question, and it's never come up before because no other state has an amendment like Amendment 1. So here's how this could work. Illinois labor law actually already let police union contracts override state law. Amendment 1 expands that. So the bottom line is that Amendment 1 could allow government union contracts, and that includes police contracts, to override state laws. And that could include portions of the SAFETY Act. So if there are police unions that are looking to change portions of the SAFETY Act, that doesn't have to be done legislatively. That can be done through a collective bargaining agreement, and that collective bargaining agreement basically trumps state law.
So again, we don't know the finality of whether Amendment 1 ultimately passed. The Illinois State Board of Elections is going to certify December 5th, but all indication is that it did get enough votes. And what you're saying is elements of the Safety Act, not the pretrial fairness portion of it that kicks in January 1st, but other elements impacting law enforcement. Does that include like the requirement for body cameras, for instance?
It definitely could. For the way, and the Safety Act is hundreds and hundreds of pages long, but if you're looking at it, the question to ask yourself is, does this affect a police officer's employment? Does it affect his so-called economic welfare or his safety at work? Those are some of the new terms that Amendment 1 added. That's something that government unions could not negotiate in the past, but now they can. And so if you look at the Safety Act, that could include things like the portion that prohibit anonymous complaints against officers, or any kind of restrictions on what constitutes a police officer's use of force. It could include wearing body cameras. It could include specific training, like instruction on the use of force techniques or de-escalation techniques. So there are a number of things that have actually been fairly controversial in, police reform and in looking at collective bargaining agreements in the past. Those were put in the Safety Act, but now those police unions would have the ability to demand that there are basically contrary provisions in their collective bargaining agreements that would override state law, like the Safety Act.
And I imagine, too, there's been conversation about police certification, which kind of goes in line with, the anonymous complaints that could be raised. So how should municipalities across the state that deal with public safety contracts, how should they brace for this?
That is an excellent question. And, I go back to the fact that this has never been tried. And this is one of the things that we warned about before Amendment 1 was passed, that no other state has done this. And this opens our state and our municipalities, our local government units up to having to negotiate things that have never been tested before. And so, as a word of caution, I guess, to those municipalities, I think it's just to do what you just said, brace yourself, look for the things within the contracts that are already existing, that can be bolstered, if you will, or that are good negotiating points. For now, police unions cannot go on strike. That is something that's in our Illinois state law. So that is something that some municipalities will be protected against, as opposed to some of the other unions. So this applies not just to police unions, but to all unions. So there could be other unions within a municipality that demand something that's contrary to state law, but they will have the ability to go on strike in order to get those demands met. So for now, at least, we don't have any kind of state precedent that allows police unions to go on strike. So it is something that's going to have to be bargained at the negotiation table or go to arbitration.
Well, I was going to say, or litigated, which could add to the extra costs that local municipalities have to incur if indeed they run into these types of hurdles. Mailee Smith, she's the Director of Labor Policy with the Illinois Policy Institute and also a staff attorney there. Greatly appreciate you sharing with us as we anticipate any possible changes at the Illinois State House concerning the Pretrial Fairness Act. There's now this other element that could impact the overall Safety Act and various portions concerning law enforcement. So we'll be watching that space closely. Appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's news.